107504. Email enquiries@rigworldsolutions.com. Rigworld Solutions, crafted in Ghana, engineered for the world. The Point of View is powered by Airtel Tigo. Have you heard that Airtel Tigo calls from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. and Airtel Tigo money transfers are now free on new SIMs? Now you know. Airtel Tigo. Life is simple. And Lydia Contraceptive. With Lydia, you truly decide.
Hello, welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. On The Point of View, we get the right guests. We ask them relevant questions on very important issues that matter to you. The name is Bernard Avler. This show is live and interactive. If you're watching on TV, you can send us your comments or your views or your questions on the WhatsApp number on the screen. If you're watching on any of the social media platforms, you can put your comment into the stream. We have a big debate for you today. It's been 2 weeks of Agyapa, but we still are none the wiser about 3 aspects of the deal. So tonight, I'm going to delve into an arrangement that the government wanted to do to maximize the value that the Republic derives from its mineral wealth, to monetize the mineral income accruing to the Republic in a sustainable and responsible way, to obtain what the government calls urgently needed capital for development through equity capital market transaction. Set the cat among the pigeons. I have a very exciting panel, both in-house and also joining us via technology. Stay with us. Don't forget, The Point of View is brought to you by Airtel Tigo. Life is simple. All right, so what am I doing tonight? I'm going to deal with the Agyapa issue from 3 angles, because there are 3 key questions that have been asked. The first group of questions have to do with valuation of the company that Ghana is hoping to float on the London and Ghana Stock Exchange. Is it really $1 billion? Is that the maximum value could have derived? What method was used to arrive at that valuation? We'll deal with that valuation question. Then we'll deal with legal issues. Is it true the Attorney General raised a myriad of questions about the deal? Have all the concerns been addressed? And then we'll also deal with the governance issues, the veil, who are the people who are beneficial owners, Agyapa, Asase, and all these interesting things that have come at tax haven, and all those issues. Contract in perpetuity. Now, in studio, I have 2 members of parliament. One's name is very similar to the deal. It's called Andrew Agyapa Mesa. He's the MP for Second D. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bernard. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are wearing glasses, and there's glasses on your mask. Is that
yes, yes. This is a fellow Ghanaian.
Oh, this is fellow.
Yes.
He's branded the 2 eyes.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. He's MP for Second D. We also have former Deputy Minister for Energy, who's MP for Yape Kusou. He's affectionately called JJ, John Jinapo. Honorable, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
I'll be joined online via Zoom by an energy economist and a political risk analyst. He's called Theo Echampong. Theo sent a 7-page opinion on the Agyapa deal. Theo, good to have you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Fantastic. Then we would also get the mind and the perspectives of some very important brains. Before that, let me just refresh your memory a bit. Last week, Minister of Finance Ken Ofori-Atta held a press conference where he tried to explain why this was an important deal. Just bring you a few minutes of that presser.
The NPP government is determined to break our economy free from these old boundaries. If the foreign investor can use the recoverable reserves in our country, he has in a concession granted us to him to raise money which he can choose to spend here or on other businesses he has elsewhere. Why can't we do the same to maximize the benefit we get and use that additional income to accelerate our development, and by so doing, expand our economy. A further significant part of this is due to our inability to leverage the most important element of research value, future cash flows. Companies utilize their access to our concessions and future resources as a means to invest in new exploration, new development, technology, diversification, and ultimately to reduce their cost of borrowing. We can leverage these same parties who give companies funding, but first we need to acknowledge that those with access to capital are not limited to our public institutions. Gold companies, oil companies, or cocoa companies. In most cases, the vast majority of those entities that are willing to pay a premium for access to our resources exist beyond our borders, and therefore we need to create structures that allow us to access their funding. If we don't do that, we allow ourselves to remain captives of the international companies that take our resources and simply market them to the same groups that we choose to ignore.
So that was a soft-spoken Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, giving a broad commentary on this. So there have been a number of issues raised on this deal. For myself, with the background I have, I think the issue of valuation is key. Let me ask Theo a few questions, because Theo in his article outlined the issues broadly into 3. So Theo, just to be clear, in your article, I think you highlighted the valuation as your first major issue, and then you highlighted governance issues, and then you highlighted the, what do you call it, the transformation plan. I have a different 3, but let me just start with you. You seem to place valuation as a top issue. Why, Theo?
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and good evening once again to your listeners. Yes. and to the panelists. But at the core of all of this, as the finance minister himself alluded to in the clip you just played ago, is the future cash flows that one is expecting from these interests that we have in the mines in question. And in order to get an idea of how much they are worth, you need to have a way to actually access it and to put some sort of value on it. And when you go back to look at the amended investment agreement itself, in section 4, I think 4A of the agreement, it states that the Mineral Investment Fund would transfer its rights and then the income interest to the royalty co, which is ARG, and then subsequently to Asase royalties. But it's all being considered for, and I quote, a royalty value of USD 1 billion. And the question really is, how was that valuation more or less arrived at? And I'll come to it in a second. But I remember also the Deputy Finance Minister, making mention or stating that the 1 billion in there is a question of the more or less the stated capital of the entity rather than the actual valuation of the reserves. But the way it had been couched in the agreement gave the impression that this is actually what is the value of the totality of the royalties in question over the lifetime of the respective mines. So when you now go back and you say, okay, let's assess it on a fair value basis, how much are Ghana's royalties, given the equity interest we have in these respective mines, worth over their respective duration? And you need 2 things to do that. You need, the production volumes, and then you need to make some idea or estimates around gold prices for the producing assets. The assets that are not producing, we need to work around the expected monetary value and then weight it by, the probability of success, etc. So when you add all of that together and you do some sort of analysis around that, the 1 billion figure that is quoted as the royalty value, I think it's a bit on the low side. And it's a bit on the low side because if you even use, conservative estimates of gold prices and you use the $200 or so million of royalties that we've been getting over the last couple of years as average, and you extend that for a number of years and discount it at 5%, you're talking something in the region of about 2.1 or so. So roughly $2 billion. But because we don't have any basis as yet in the agreement, or nobody has come out to explain to us how much our resources are worth, we are all going with the 1 billion, which has been quoted as the royalty value.
Okay, so good point there. I'm going to do two. I'm going to show an equation Bright Simmons sent or posted on his Facebook page. Since you do financial economics, so you can interpret that equation for me. So put up that equation. Then I'm going to read Kofi Ansah and Fui S. Chikate's 2 letters. They have 2 articles, one dated August 26. So this is Bright Simmons' equation, the Agyapa valuation equation. So you take a photo of it. I'll come back to this issue. From Bright's valuation, the company should worth $3.6 billion. This is Bright Simmons' calculation. So basically, average annual production forecast, AF, average price forecast over 10 per ounce of gold, PF, average royalty rates, RR, royalty stream 7.56, because the 7.56 is the percentage of the total, 75.6% is the total percentage of the royalty that will be put into the company. The other percentage goes into a different fund, times AF, which is average annual production forecast, times PF, which is the average price forecast, times RR, which is the annual royalty rate, which will give you C. Then he has something called the average remaining mine life, which is a term, risk of collection discount rate is R. And then when he puts all that together, the stream is in that equation. Those of you who don't like math, let me read it in English. Okay, so you take a shot of it. JJ says he's going to calculate it. John Jenapo is calculating. You did statistics. Now, let me read.
That's an annuity.
That's an annuity, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let me read for you Kofi Ansah and Fui Chikate's articles. They have 2 letters. And the first letter has 9 paragraphs. And what Mr. Dubahi has done is that he has responded to each concern in a document he sent to me. So if you can permit me. First paragraph. We have each been involved in the Ghana mining sector for almost 4 decades, including participating in critical reforms of its regulatory regime. We are gravely concerned about the transaction by which 75.6% of royalties payable to Ghana government over the life of a number of mining operations are being assigned to a Jersey incorporated company and its Ghanaian affiliate. While the Jersey company will initially be owned 100% by a government entity, the object reportedly is to sell just under half of its shares for $500 million. This is paragraph 1. Edubuahi's response. To clarify, it is only 12 mining operations, and the MIIF will continue to receive royalties for other mining operations. Second response to paragraph 1. The government has specific valuation objectives and will not be selling just under half of its shares for $500 million. It is the intention to raise approximately $500 million. Third response to paragraph 1. The government will only proceed with the transaction if evaluation meets the high expectations of the government. Given the sensitivities around the IPO, these details cannot be provided at this stage. So this is Charles Edubuahi's response. Paragraph 2. We appreciate that expressing our views on this transaction at this time is likely to be feed into the mill of political partisanship. However, we cannot for that reason, disable ourselves from speaking. Given the potential implications of the transaction and what it has for national revenue for the future, from all the information available to us, it is hard to overcome the apprehension that were the transaction to go ahead on its current terms, the royalty rights, including from stable, established producing mines, will be given up at a gross undervalue. So the value question is there. Edubuahi's response. As above, the government is well aware of the valuation of the royalty streams and does not intend for the valuation to be at $1 billion. This is a key point. The government does not intend for the valuation to be at $1 billion. This was a valuation which was given for internal purposes for transferring the assets between the wholly owned entities. Then it says the Jersey company will not be valued at $1 billion. Paragraph 3. This is where the calculation gets interesting. I won't read the whole letter, I'll just read a few. Now, if we were to assume that gold prices will drop from the current $1,900 an ounce to, let's say, $1,500 for the period of 2020-2023, on current production projections, the royalty revenue from just the 11 existing producing mines for those 4 years that will be transferred to a Agyapa company under this transaction would, in 2020 money, be $1 billion. This does not include future royalties from mines coming on stream imminently, such as those at Obuasi and the highly promising Namdini mine near Bogatanga, nor does it include post-2023 projected production of the 11 mines. Edubahin says, the government is working with a team of advisors to ensure that maximum value is derived from the transaction. This includes detailed valuation modes and gold price forecast, and includes assumptions on increased production from the assets. As pointed out, the gold price is at an all-time high, and as such, it is the expectation that the gold price will fall in the future as highlighted, allowing the government to monetize a portion of the revenue from gold royalties at the high price. Current high prices is a hedge against the fall in gold price. I'm going to read 2 more paragraphs and then I come to the studio. The key argument is in paragraph 6. What the government reportedly expects to get from the sale of the shares in the Jersey company is $500 million. At an average gold price of $1,800 an ounce, the government would get more than $400 million in 2021 if it kept its rights to receive all royalties from the 11 producing mines. Emphasis: there is no reason why, in order to get $500 million now, we should rush into this transaction at the risk of losing substantial future income. Then they end on paragraph 8. If the purpose of the transaction is to stabilize government income, how does converting a direct right to receive royalty from mining companies into a right to receive dividends, if and when declared, emphasis mine, from a company to whom the miners pay the royalty, achieve this? So very important question. Numbers and also certainty of revenue. This is paragraph 7 and 8. What is Edubahin's response? Again, it is not the government's intention to sell 49% of the Jersey company for $500 million. The government expects to raise approximately $500 million for the sale of minority stake. So he's saying the 49 is not necessarily what they are looking for. The 500 is the money they are looking for the minority stake. As a shareholder in the Jersey company, the government will also benefit from meaningful annual dividends. Conclusion: the government will never enter into a transaction which undervalues the country's most valuable resources. The government is working with a team of advisors to deliver the most appropriate valuation for the assets. Due to the sensitivities around releasing information ahead of an IPO, this information cannot be made available. Now, this is a very key point, because in the article, Mr. Ansa and Mr. Chikata are asking what was the basis for the valuation. What price and quantity do you use to arrive at 1 billion? Mr. Edubahin says the 1 billion is not the market value, it's just the book value. And the 1 billion, we expect to get more than 1 billion. But we cannot release our calculation because of sensitivities. Let me go back to the man on the phone, since he's the economist. Are you clear on the answers Mr. Edubahin gives, and do they make sense to you?
Yeah, so the answers make sense. The difficulty was having to place that 1 billion in the amended investment agreement and actually calling it royalty value. And funny enough, when you actually look at the definition of royalty value in the agreement, it just makes references you back to the section 4A of the agreement. So there's no specific definition of the royalty value. And that's what sort of created the confusion in which a lot of people, and then the messaging around that created the impression that the value of the royalty streams over the lifetime of the respective, assets is worth about 1 or so billion. But if they are now saying that they're actually consulting their advisors, etc., the question then becomes, the methodology would pretty much be the same. It's a question of what production levels do you anticipate over the remaining life of these mines. It's a question of what do you expect with gold prices, and then what sort of multipliers do you then use to get your cash flow model. Or if you went the price earnings ratio approach, again, you need some assumptions around the dividend policy, what to expect in terms of dividend, and that again will give you a number on the valuation. The thing is that because it's become a public debate, and I understand where they're coming from, because typically if you're going to the market, these statements or things around valuation will be considered forward-looking. So I understand where they're coming from. But we are also dealing with a sovereign entity here, so it's not necessarily a private, placement as such. And people also need to have an idea of what is the value of those resources that we've got on the ground, and then we can debate the substantive question is it even worth it at all to go this approach? What are the advantages of that versus, as others have suggested and myself have suggested, selling the royalty rights outright, get whatever 500 million or so that you need, but give yourself the flexibility of going back to the market if you want, later down the years, or another government comes, but you don't encumber them in a contract that ties you down for 20 plus years. Those are the questions that really need to be addressed. But from what you've just said, from the minister's statement, there's no ambiguity in the sense that the valuation would be based on the same fundamental premise, which would be the cash flows that you expect and whatever discount factor that you apply to it. And if you do that analysis, I think a range, a conservative range, I think is about $2.5 or so billion in present or today's money terms.
When I interviewed Charles Edubahin on radio, he was talking about PE ratios. But it's interesting that based on this, he's now using cash flow. But that's a different conversation. I need to also say that Mr. Chikate and Mr. Ansan have written another letter, and there's also another response, but I'll do that later. So let's leave the evaluation. Let me go to Parliament and speak to my two guests. Welcome again. Let me start with Agyapa Mensah. Somebody wanted me to ask you whether the Agyapa name means that the company, when they were putting the deal together, you were part. That's why they gave the name Agyapa. Does your Agyapa mean the same as the Agyapa in the deal? Just to be clear.
Well, let me say good evening to our cherished viewers. Those of them who are listening to us on radio as well.
Great.
This question indeed came up on the floor of Parliament when Honorable Muntaka, the Minority Chief Whip, posed the question as to whether I had any connection to the deal because the name is similar to mine, even though the spelling is slightly different. Mine is an E and this one is an E. But to the point, the company is 100% wholly owned by the Minerals Income Investment Fund.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not the fund. And so it cannot be the case that I have any connection whatsoever to the company. Indeed, the fund was set up by an act of Parliament in 2018, empowering them to set up an SPV and list them on any jurisdiction of their choice. And so that is exactly what has been done. My understanding is that the choice of the name Agyapa really was Agyapa
Treasure.
Yes.
Agyapa treasure.
Yes.
Not Agyapa good father.
Yes. But because of the jurisdiction that they intended to list, they felt that Agyapa was going to be a little
mispronounced.
Absolutely. And so shorten it, and then that was how come they arrived.
That's A. So this was Agyapa, it should have been E.
Well,
okay,
some spell there's E. I mean A, but mine is an E.
So Agyapa
that's right.
Wow.
So it's the short version to make it easier for people who would be expressing an interest in acquiring a stake in the vehicle that is intended to be listed on the LSE. Was the reason why they shortened it to
Agyapa.
Agyapa, yes.
What role have you played? I know you're on the communications committee and also on a subsidiary legislating committee. So did you look at this at any committee level at all personally?
Yes, indeed. For some time now, the chairman of the finance committee has asked me to join his side on the committee. So I tend to attend the finance committee meetings as well with my very good friend who is a former member of the committee. So
he's a member of the finance committee?
Yes, he's a member of the
committee. You are communication?
I'm a friend of the committee.
So you're a lawyer?
Indeed, our rules, yes, I'm a lawyer.
You're a lawyer, okay.
Yeah, the rules of the House do allow members to attend any committee meeting with approval of the chairman and leadership of the committee. So I was indeed part of the conversation relative to this transaction.
So you are aware of this from 2018 to now?
Yes.
It's a good deal for Ghana?
Absolutely. Not a doubt at all. And indeed, I'm particularly excited that people are raising questions with respect to value. Okay, because that's the whole idea. How do we maximize the value that Ghana derives from our mineral royalties? And Bernard, it will interest you to know that indeed in 2010, the NDC attempted, unfortunately they failed, to set up a royalties company to do exactly the same thing.
Whoa.
What?
Yes, I have the documents here.
In what year?
2011. Apologies.
2011.
Yes. This is a memo from the committee that was set up, Ghana Gold Company Committee. Subject establishment of a national vehicle to manage and monetize the financial returns from Ghana's gold interest. This was as a consequence of the budget statement that was presented to Parliament on 18th November 2010 by the Finance Minister. It's all here.
Can I have a look at that?
Please do. Please. And you see in there clearly the intent of government at the time to maximize returns from our mineral royalties by setting up a vehicle, Ghana Gold Company Limited, to do exactly the same thing. Indeed, you recall that when we were passing the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, the former president, then vice president, told the people of this country that it would be foolish for anybody to oppose an attempt to collateralize our mineral resources. Because the pregnant woman who hasn't got roads in their communities cannot wait. It was important for us to borrow at the time and build infrastructure so that that pregnant woman can have access to better health facilities, drive on good roads. Joy FM reported it. It's right here. That was when he threw out his infamous baloney. You recall? So the principle has been with us.
Okay.
Can you read the memo?
We have
the intro
from.
You can read the budget. It's right there.
Parliamentary Select Committee on.
It was to the Parliamentary Select Committee.
Committee on Finance, Select Committee on Energy and Mines, from Ghana Gold Company Committee, 30 October 2011. Subject: establishment of a national vehicle to manage and maximize the financial returns from Ghana's gold interest. Scope and purpose. The Parliamentary Select Committee on Finance and Energy and Mines are being asked to consider the proposal to establish a national vehicle to manage and maximize the financial returns from the country's interest and royalties from gold companies and mines.
Fantastic.
Then there's a background given. It's about, how many pages is this? About 8 pages. So there's a background. I see Gold Equity Royalty Company. I see President Companies, Franco-Nevada.
Thank you.
Oregon Minerals Limited.
Thank you very much.
Wheaton Gold.
Thank you.
And then there's the key assumptions, discounted cash flow, projected gold production, and all kinds of things. Establishment of the company, objects and functions, company set up as commercial venture. So, Agyapa Mensah, your point is what? That because
my point is this.
NDC contemplated a discussion around this.
So the suggestion that somebody is sitting in his living room cooking a transaction for the benefit of his family cannot be factual based on the documents that are available to us. And I agree with the principle. Okay? But purely for political mischief, and because they think that everybody has a short memory in this country, nobody will chance upon this document. Nobody will read the budget statement in which the proposal was made by the finance minister.
So you are referring on to NDC, not to Theo and to the people who have been interviewed.
I don't have a problem because, look, Mr. Fuchikata, my good professor, has written a significant matter with respect to value. And so if the responses that come from government satisfy that value question, there's no issue. But how about the people who are playing propaganda?
Let's hear his argument. So let's pause there.
Very well.
First, what's your initial comment? Based on now he's thrown something at us. I don't know if for your perusal.
First of all, let me just deal with this.
Agyapa,
You must get a difference between monetize and that NDC was going to do the same thing you were doing. That is completely inaccurate, and that is not factual. Nobody is against the establishment of an SPV. An SPV is simply a special purpose vehicle that you create, insulate it, and use it to achieve a specific aim. It has a lifespan. When it establishes that objective or aim, that is it. And so, viewers, what Honorable Agyapa Mensah is trying to do is to equate the very noble objective that the NDC set out in a very consultative process, very transparent process, with this opaque process. The two cannot be the same. But I want to just
So
lay some...
you are saying what? That in their case, they wanted to
They are monetizing.
And in the 2011
There's
case,
nothing here that shows that
were
we're
you parliament at the
monetizing.
time, just to be clear?
Oh, I've read all the documents.
No,
I've
just
them here.
for the record.
Oh, no,
You
I wasn't.
okay.
I'm the first time.
So, in the case of what happened in 2011, it was an attempt to maximize. But they were talking about forming a royalty company.
You can form a royalty company. What's wrong with that?
And the comparison was Wheaton and all the same things.
Let me raise the issues, and then viewers will tell whether the issues we are raising are the same as what he's trying to refer
But can you tell us what you were trying to do then?
You form an SPV. You are receiving your mineral royalties. It is 100% owned by government. We never intended to go and offload undervalued shares to foreigners. Where is it there?
So in that case, the royalty company was going to raise capital, or how?
You are getting revenues, is that not it?
Yes.
You could even take a stake in the mining companies. The state can decide that this prospective mining company is so profitable that based on that SPV, take some shares there so that the state can benefit from that. You can even decide to list here in Ghana so that Ghanaians will be part owners and own part of the company. And so the two are completely different.
So you're saying that you didn't intend to sell a part of the, what's the name of the company again? Gold something?
Ghana Gold Company Limited.
Let him tell us the similarities. I'm going to raise the issues.
I will
Let
show
me raise
you
the issues.
if you give me a second.
Let me raise the issues.
What indeed the finance minister said to Parliament.
Okay, let him respond
It's
and we'll
here,
see.
black and white.
I just wanted to be sure what they wanted to do,
Can I
whether
do
they
with
were
the
going to float the company on a exchange, or they're going to use the cash flows of the company to get a debt or something. But you go on, Mr.
Let me tease out the issues. First of all, whatever decision we take, there are implications. Today, as we speak, our debt is rising from 120 to 258 billion. Our debt to GDP is rising from 56 to about 70%. Two, when you look at your debt to GDP, you are not just concerned about the debt. You are looking at how much of your revenues that's used to service the debt. Japan's debt is about 100, and yet it's sustainable because they are paying lower interest rates, they are getting the revenues, and they are able to manage it. And so Ghana's situation calls for proper thinking and introspection. If you read the budget, the current budget, our tax revenue, and that's your first line item as a country, is 49 billion. Our debt servicing has moved from 10 billion to 38 billion in just 3 years. They were telling us that they were doing debt reprofiling and all that. Today, we spend 38 billion on our debt, representing almost 80% of our tax revenue, before we even think of paying salaries and other statutory payments. This year alone, we've approved 108 billion cedis for this government to spend.
Okay.
It's unprecedented. It's never happened. So if you have 108 billion to spend, and you are left with 3 months to elections, what is so urgent and so critical that you ought to rush through the process? That's a fundamental issue I want to establish. And I'm taking the issues one after the other. Now let's come to this agreement proper. On the very last day that we're rising, he is aware, he was on the committee. Documents were brought to us. These are the documents. Very bulky documents. This is just one of the documents. 5 of them.
Yes.
Members of parliament were asked to peruse all these documents.
Investment agreement, relationship agreement, operations
Assignment
management
agreement, all those agreements.
revenue management agreement, assignment agreement.
Members of parliament, the finance committee, were asked to peruse all these documents from that morning and approve all of this.
Are you talking the plenary or even the committee members?
The committee
You remember the
members.
finance committee? So the first time you saw this was when?
Was that morning? Ask him. And we raised it before the chairman of the finance committee.
Is that correct?
Yes, it
here.
is.
He's here.
The documents were submitted on the Thursday, okay?
The 5 documents.
Yes, and they are here. I have them all
5.
here. It's not. Look,
These are the documents.
don't create
On the
the
day of
impression that
approval.
in any event, Bernard, in any event, nobody reviews every clause of an agreement like this.
I am
because
very
there are
diligent.
standard provisions.
Look,
Okay.
Bernard,
No, but hold on. Have you read the AG's letters?
Yes, I have.
Because
coming there.
she's dealing with specifics
I
in
have
paragraphs
read-
and clauses.
I have
So
read
if
all
you say
of them.
nobody... Anyway, let me finish. We'll come back to you.
So I want to raise key issues.
They are saying what there were 5 documents.
5
But is this
documents.
new? Parliament always does this.
Never, I've never seen
Oh,
that.
where
Let him give us
we've covered
where
Parliament
5
since 2004.
documents, 5 documents.
Almost every deal,
I am
the minority
saying that-
complains that they don't know until 2 days, 3 days to the day. They don't have enough time. They are railroaded. They are packed. There's no news story.
I am presenting with the facts. If you have anything contrary, you can debunk that. And he's here. He's from the opposite side. We raised that issue with the finance committee chairman. I said, we cannot approve this in less than 24 hours. This decision is far-reaching. It has serious implications. And so we suggested that, look, let us rise, go and peruse it, do proper consultation with the people of Ghana, so that even if you want to recall, we'll come back. The chairman overruled and said he was giving us just 2 hours. I said, no problem. So we went 2 hours and came. The first issue we raised was the finance minister's own letter, the memo itself. And this is the memo. This is the memo, 13th August. And we rose on the 13th of August.
Same day.
That is it. It's here. This here, is it? Is
We
it?
rose on the 14th. Really.
Please, can I make my point?
But we
Agyapa?
rose on the 14th.
Oh, can I make my point? Now listen, the finance minister says on page 3 that this agreement, the Fund Act amendment, is premised on Act 978, and that the Fund Act amendments, as amended by Parliament, are in the process of being assented to by the President and will shortly come into force. Bernard, you know what it means? They came and amended certain portions of the Act. And then the minister is telling Parliament that the President is yet to assent to those amendments and that the law will shortly come into force. So the minority said, look, if the law hasn't come into force, why are you rushing the system through? Let us wait for the law to come into force so that we refer to the law and look at the clauses and see whether they are in tandem with the law.
Okay.
The majority side insisted that, look, they will still go ahead with that. It was a heated debate, that aside. Now, what do they want to do? They want to go and list on the stock exchange and raise about 500 million. I'm surprised that they say that they are yet to value the company. So where from the 1 billion?
He says it's book value.
Book value. So how do you want to
Not
raise the
market
500 million?
value.
No problem. So how do you want to raise the 500 million? On what basis? You are going to float shares through an IPO. An IPO simply means that you are doing an initial public offer. An initial public offer means that you would have been going there with a quoted price. And you expect that if that is successful, you will be getting some money. That is based on valuation. So if you don't value the company, how then do you go to list?
Let me read his response. So, fair enough. And because on the valuation side, let me just do this. So, response to the second letter of Chikata, because again, Chikata and Ansa ask the questions you're asking. And so, just permit me to do this. How was the figure of 1 billion arrived at as the value of the rights being assigned? Secondly, okay, we have heard it said that this is simply a nominal figure used for the incorporation of Agyapa. This does not presumably mean it was arbitrarily chosen. The question as to how it was arrived at remains. Secondly, if this is not the government's advisor's opinion as to the real value of the rights being assigned, what then do you think the real value is? How did you arrive at your valuation? What gold price did you use? Over what period? And what projection did you use? A minister's response. How was the figure 1 billion arrived at as of the end of the rights being assigned? Answer. The government is well aware of the valuation of the royalty streams and will not be selling Agyapa royalties at a value of $1 billion. The figure of $1 billion is purely a balance sheet value derived in conjunction with the accounting advisors and not a market valuation. Question 2. How did they arrive at this valuation? Answer. The government is working with a team of advisors to ensure the maximum market valuation is achieved for the transaction. The market value will be at a premium to the net asset value of the company based on an analysis of a peer group of comparable publicly quoted royalty companies. Gold royalty companies currently trade at premiums depending on the assets of 20% or more of net asset value. Note that the MIF will retain control and the majority of the shares of Agyapa. So that was the question. What gold price did they use?
So let me deal
then they
with
give
this.
some answers.
So let me deal with this. So what is the underlying assumption of the 500 million? We know that you want to float 49%. That is in no doubt.
Yes.
If you want to float 49%, I expect you to receive 500 million. How did you come by that 500 million? When you claim that you are yet to conclude. You see how opaque this system is. You are yet to value the company. You don't know the actual value, but you are certain in your mind that you would offload 49%. So how did you come by that 500?
John, I think to be fair, in the first answer, Mr. Edubuahin does say that I'm just looking for the answer somewhere. He's basically saying that they are looking for 500 million, but that doesn't necessarily mean to 49%.
Thank you.
I think he said that.
Stated that the Ghana would maintain 51%.
Yes. Let me just.
So
read.
if you maintain 51%, where does the 49 go?
Maybe he has to call and answer. Let me just read that for you, just for your. Yeah. Basically saying that. The government has specific valuation objectives and will not be selling just under half of its shares for 500 million. It is the intention to raise approximately 500 million. Do you get me? So he's basically saying that they will not sell that 49% of 500 million. The amount they want is 500 million. But whether that's 49% or not, he's basically saying that's not the case. Unless you can show me in the agreement where it says...
I'll show you where they say that they will maintain 51. I'll just go there
and we get it because
for you from there.
In the meantime, we're still on the point of...
But I have a lot, so
yes,
if you
I
have
want
to
to deal with
rush
this issue for good. Let me cross the Theo while you look for it. Theo, if you are still there, thank you for staying. Is it clear from the agreement you read that the 500 million is for 49%? Because Mr. Dubai in his answer seems to be saying that, yes, we are looking for 500 million, but in essence, we could get more than 51%. I just your point on that.
Yeah, so in the agreement itself, I haven't seen that, but I have seen news articles and public statements alluding to 49% for 500 or so million. But I can go through the agreement. I don't have it, and I'll be forthright. I don't.
Okay, we seem to be losing you on the internet. Usually, UK internet is very good. What's going on?
Then, based on the net asset value. So, I'll give you an example. If can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So, if you have a net asset value of, like, based on the cash flow and then the estimation of, let's say, 1.6 billion, right? And you want to raise 500 or float 500 million of that, then the shareholding structure now changes to about 32% for the private shareholders, and then around 68% for the for the state, and then it goes on and on depending on what the underlying value really is. The problem, again, as I've said, is the communication around this. And, the government or the state agencies being forthright to us about what exactly they want to raise the monies for, what the percentages are, and how they're going to, use the money, for whatever investment they want to do.
Okay.
The challenge is that in all this brouhaha, there has been a major communication gap, and that has allowed certain things to fester. And I think that we could have been a bit more proactive on that front. But if clearly the intention, as per the latest statement coming out, indicates that they want to raise, 500 million, then the value shares or the profit splits would change. If, on the other hand, having looked at the amended investment agreement, the 49% is entrenched in there and is being considered for a notional value of 500, then implicitly what we are saying is that the valuation will amount to USD 1 billion, and that's where some of us did have some sort of concerns around that.
So if the valuation in real terms is more than 1 billion, then the 500 million they are looking for doesn't become the 49%. So either they have to change this 49% thing, or the 1 billion is the valuation they have. It can't be both. So it's either one. Yeah. So Mr. Jinapo's point is that if you say you want 49, you want 500 billion, and you are saying 500 million, and you are saying you are giving out 49%, it means your valuation is 1 billion. So even though Mr. Dubois says that, well, we are looking for 500 million, but that's not 49%, that cannot really be correct.
I have some points there.
Yeah, so thank you, Theo. John, let's wrap up on this valuation point.
There's a lot. Let me
I want to do legal issues too. Yeah. This is still the point of view.
Now, let's put that. Two, like we all say, if you want to go into a business and you claim it's profitable, what do? You give us the projected cash flows. It is the projected cash flows that will tell us whether the business is worth undertaking or not. What are the underlying assumptions? And like Bryce Simmons did, I just used 20 years to check for the PV. And based on the figures I have seen in the budget, mineral royalties amount to about 1 billion cedis per annum. It means that when you discount those future cash flows, which even at 5%, it means that you're looking at $3 billion. $3 billion. And so how do you come by this kind of conclusions? But you see, as members of parliament, it's important that before we grant approvals, we are clear in our minds what we intend to do. Now you want to go and float the shares. You claim that you'll be paying dividend to the investors. So where is the dividend policy? They say they can't provide that. You want to list on the stock exchange. We need to see the prospectus. It is the prospectus that tells us the relationship between you, the current shareholder, and the incoming shareholders, because you are offloading your shares. That was not made available to us. We said, give us the future cash flows. When we get the cash flows, we can also do analysis and even tell whether this deal is worth it or not. That was not provided. Now the Attorney General's letter.
We'll take the break for the Attorney General because that's a separate second side. So we've done valuation, we've done a bit of economics and things like this. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at the legal issues that have been raised because there are probably about 5 different letters the Attorney General wrote. We have the July 22nd letter,
but Bernard,
and then I'm coming, and then the August 12th letter of the Attorney General, where she raises 7 further points. We'll try and see if those things have been addressed. This is the point of view. My guest in studio, Honorable Agyapa Mensah, MP for Sekondi, Honorable John Jinapo, MP for Yapre Kosovo, and Theo Echampo, energy economist and political risk analyst. Stay with us.
Morning. I just sent you Untitled to go money from my new number. We delivered 2 healthy kids last night. Congrats. Have you heard? Kwesi has
2 kids. Have you heard?
My son has 2 kids. Abazi. No. No. Now your sister almost 7. Have you heard the news about the missing chicken? Have you heard? Get free calls and free Airtel Tigo money transfers for 6 months on new Airtel Tigo SIMs. Get a SIM today.
'Cause I'm the new best thing. I'm the new best thing. Better than you've ever seen. I'm the new best thing. I'm gonna be the king. I bring that ching, ching, ching. Yeah, I'm the new best thing. I'm the new best thing.
Discover new Silky Guinness Smooth. Perfectly balanced for a smooth, refreshing taste. New Guinness Smooth.
Welcome back to The Point of View. We are going till 10:30. My guests in studio, Agyapa Mensah and John Jinapo, on the line or via Zoom. He's actually in the UK with Theo Echampo. Quick point from Andrew Mensah, because I wanted a quick explanation of the Bryce Simmons equation from Theo before we come back to the Attorney General's issue.
That's fine.
But quick comment from you.
See, the reason why I brought this NDC memo was to clearly establish that as a country, both political parties have the firm principle that it is important for us to do something about the structure of our mineral royalties. And so it cannot be the case that the NDC can then now turn around and pretend as if to say this is something that has just been sprung upon the people of Ghana. Indeed, in the 2018 and 2019 budget statements, the finance minister mentioned for the first time in 2018, subsequently brought the bill, which was passed by Parliament. In 2019, he gave an update of where it is that we have gotten to before these documents are submitted to Parliament. So they cannot say that this transaction was opaque. They cannot say it was shrouded in secrecy. They cannot say it was corrupt, and that there was some transaction that some people had sat in their rooms intending to defraud the people of Ghana. That cannot be the case. See, what we are failing to get is that Agyapa, as we speak, is a government of Ghana company. That is the company and not some foreign entity unknown to us that we are having this engagement with. That we are mandating per this agreement to go out there onto the market.
But he says that in their plan, there was no plan to sell any part of the, is it called GEG, Ghana something gold something?
It's not true.
That in your case, you are selling part of, you are floating shares to sell part.
The benefits to government of having such a company are several, including the following: delivery of significant capital sum to the government raised from private markets, innovative way to capitalize on the market, okay, for royalties, provides government with continued exposure to capital appreciation of a national company together with ongoing dividends, availability of capital raising options to government, including trade sale, stock market listing, gold-linked bond base.
Stock market listing.
It's all here. It's all here in black and white.
But you said the thing was just a wholly owned government, but it's pointing out that the advantages
that's the sad bit.
Because I think the key point, I remember when you raised your issue on the floor, Mr. Ponkrumah's argument was that this was equity, not debt. Now you are telling me that that's the major problem you have.
Let me deal with the equity.
So he's saying that now, even in your document, you were pointing out to something to do with also listing. So it's not a new idea.
What is so wrong with a government company listing on the stock exchange? What is wrong with that? If you list on the Ghana Stock Exchange, you are deepening your market.
So your problem is the UK one?
No. It's this issue of not debt. Listing. You go and list on the stock exchange. When you float shares, what happens? You get money. You invest that money in that company and make it profitable. But if I go and list on the stock exchange, I float the shares, people buy, and I undertake with them that into infinity, 75.6% of my mineral royalties, I'll make it available to this SPV, and that I'll have no control over that.
That's not true.
What is debt? Wait.
That is not
no,
true.
No, let me just get some point.
Agyapa, I've read these documents very well.
If you float a company,
yes,
you essentially are selling equity.
Yes.
So the money you get is equity that you use. And I'm saying that he points out that in that document, they also state that they will float shares.
I am saying that in that document, where is it stated that when we float shares and you buy the shares, we would guarantee our mineral royalties in perpetuity to you, the SPV.
So that's the fundamental difference.
That is the crust of the matter.
It's false.
What we are doing here, Agyapa, if I may explain, the people of Ghana understand things better, is that we are going to float. When you buy the shares, we are guaranteeing that 75% of our mineral royalties into infinity. There's no finite term on that. We'll make it available.
So was there a finite term to the previous one?
We didn't even contemplate that because we felt that that would have been a rape of the nation's
resources. So what was the period for this?
We felt that if we had decided that we'll go and float on the stock exchange and mortgage all our future revenues to an SPV, it would be unconscionable, like the Attorney General stated.
Okay.
And Mahama administration or Emirates administration wouldn't even contemplate that because that will amount to gross irresponsibility. So the two are not the same and they cannot be the same. But finally, Bernard, let's assume that you earn 10,000 cedis a month. You go to Agyapa and you take 5,000 cedis from him. And you say that that is not debt. It's not your debt. But every month, when you earn your salary, you are undertaking that you will give him 5,000 out of your salary because of the money you've taken from him. And then you tell Ghanaians that that is not debt. Do you think Ghanaians are that daft that you decide that you will go and take 500 million from would-be investors and mortgage your revenues that is captured in the budget as a taxed revenue, 75.6% in perpetuity. You will mortgage to that company, and then Ken Ofori-Atta turns around and look into the face of Ghanaians and say that it is not debt. So what is it? And he comes with some convoluted terms to try and confuse people. These are revenues that will be available. What it means is that from next year, this 1 billion would not be available for the Mahama administration when we assume office. It will not be available because of your haste, your indecent haste, to go and take a so-called 500 million for what you call critical investments.
Quick question.
Last, please, just quickly, the 500 million, what are they going to use it for?
He has to answer that.
Do you know?
No, he has
when
to
we
answer.
go for Eurobond, don't we itemize what we want to use the money for? You claim that you are going to take 500 million, and the people's representatives, we as members of parliament, we do not even know what you intend using the 500 million for. Under our Appropriation Act, if the money has not been budgeted for, you cannot even use it. We have approved the media review budget.
Address that question.
We have approved the media review budget. This 500 million, he says that the minister updated it.
I think you need to
go to the fiscal tables and tell me where this 500 million finds expression. And what we're going to use
because
the 500 million
to get that money this year.
No, the listing is supposed to take place latest by 31st December. What it means is that whatever revenue that is going to come in 2021.
So you don't need to have budgeted for it.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So why the rush?
No. It's not a question of rush.
So why the rush?
Listen.
Why are you in an indecent haste?
No, but you just raised a question about the appropriation, which is addressed. But be that as it may, what will the money be used for? I think that's a legitimate question.
No, I heard the finance ministry last Friday spell out some program areas that they're going to use some of this funding for, which includes the ability of the company itself to make investments in the mining sector, some hospitals, educational infrastructure and all that, particularly in the mining areas. We can ask for details. I don't have a problem.
But don't you think that in approving
you are a member of parliament, you sit on the committee, government wants to go and borrow 500 billion.
No, I do the questioning.
Sorry.
Yes, government is not going to borrow 500 million. This talk of the distinction between debt and equity that today JJ is pretending
you are raising
he doesn't appreciate. It's baffling. Because look, we sat in this country, we offloaded shares in GCB. What was it? We took people's money up front so that we pay them proceeds from the operations of GCB as dividends.
Yes.
Was it debt that we took?
How is that different? Did we agree that we'll give them some revenue streams?
No, but JJ, I
think
it was the operational profits. It's the revenue.
Right? So if you are saying that the modus for the payback is a problem, but you can't say that there's no difference.
Let me quickly explain this to you. I'm sure the finance person. Equity shareholders, what do? They contribute for the success or operation of the company. Equity shareholders are residual owners of the company. When you float shares and you raise money, what do you use the money for? Don't you use the money to invest in that company like he's saying, so that the company will be profitable?
Yes.
If you are doing so, why then do you go to the next step and say that your gold mineral royalties, you are confirming and undertaking that you mortgage all of that to that SPV.
But let me do something.
When we offloaded our stake,
it's good to have somebody on the line. Hold on.
Just a quick point.
You are a lawyer and you are not. Let me just deal with the economics on this.
Without respect.
Okay.
When we offloaded our stake in Ghana Telecom, did it go to support our budget or it went to invest in Ghana Telecom?
It supported our budget. But we never said that when we take our tax revenue from the telecoms, we'll give it to them. Did we say that?
So that when we take our tax revenue, so you are saying that like the money, hold on,
communication tax.
Just to be clear, the money we raise from Vodafone used to support our budget.
Yes.
No problem.
No problem.
So what's your problem?
The problem is that we didn't go a step further to say that all the taxes we will receive from the telecommunication sector, we would mortgage all those revenues, 75.6% of that, and give it to the telcos. Did we go to that extent?
In paying back, you mean?
So is the debt if you are paying back? If it's equity, why are you paying back? You just ask that in paying back. If it is equity, it is not debt. What are you paying back? The deception of this government is beyond comprehension. This deal, this deal. Look,
yeah, hold on. Let me deal with Theo. Theo, I thought debt and equity was pretty simple to understand, but it looks like the politicians are saying that there are two different things. Mr. Jinapo's argument is that the modus of giving 75% of, and in fact, you people who are economists, you call it securitization of future flows. That's the technical term. You call it securitization of future flows. It's basically saying that that's not the same thing that happened in the case of Vodafone and that issue. So, John, you are taking issue with the securitization of the future flow. Is that your argument?
Fantastic.
Hold on. But if what you did with the road fund, is that not securitization of the flow?
That is why we describe that as debt.
But securitization of future flows is not new. Even though it's
so let's agree that we are going to borrow money.
Yes.
We want to service that money with our mineral resources.
Yeah.
Then we determine at what rate.
So securitization of future flows is not criminal.
You are not getting my point, Bernard. I am saying that if I go and borrow money with road fund, it is terminal. I borrow maybe 100 million.
Yeah.
I'll pay within 5 years, 10 years. I know that in 10 years I'm done.
So they should call it by its name and stop changing the name.
And give us the exact details of how they intend
I still think I'll talk to you on that facility. Securitization of future flows seems fairly complicated, but it's not esoteric, right? So can you just help us here? Mr. Jinapo is basically saying that the way the government is going about it, they should be clear and say it's debt. And therefore, they should call it by its name. But I just want your quick thoughts on that type of business, because he's saying that it's unconscionable.
I think there's a lot of technical jargon being thrown about, but we probably need to maybe try and break it down a bit further. So if you go back to the case of ESLA and what was issued, basically we took all the energy levies, put it in some bank accounts somewhere, and ring-fenced those proceeds, right? And then sold bonds or IOUs off the back of that to be able to pay the energy sector levies. In the case of Vodafone, it's a slightly different entity because Vodafone was already an operating company. It had assets, it had liabilities, and therefore the valuation of Vodafone or the net valuation of Vodafone meant that when you now offloaded or like sold your shares in Vodafone, the people buying into it basically became like equity holders. In the particular case of Agyapa that we're dealing with, there's some similar dynamic playing out here. So the entity, as we speak currently, does not really have any assets, or neither does it have any more or less liabilities. And what the state is proposing to do is monetize, not securitize. There's a little bit difference there, but monetize all those future flows that would come to today, and then raise some debt. Raise some. Sorry, I didn't say that. I'm confused. And then basically raise some money, right? Raise equity.
That's his preference. He prefers
No. Raise equity. No, let's be clear. Let's be clear. What they are selling, what you are selling is you are selling shares, and the person is giving you money for that. So what you have become is an equity or shareholder in the entity or the going concern. Now the question is, what is the underlying value of the business that you are investing in? And the underlying value of the business that you're investing in is what you're expecting as cash flows over the life of those respective mines. So it becomes a question of equity. And even when the company is dissolved, right, if something untoward happened, etc., the preference scale would always be that bondholders and other debt holders will be sorted out first before equity holders come like last within that pecking order. But I think it's just a bit of the technical jargon going back and forth, and we all get confused in that equation. But just to restate again, it's a question of raising equity, and the equity must be backed up by the underlying value of the company. And the underlying value of the company.
Usually, most of the literature you read around this securitization thing deals with debt. This equity arrangement is pretty uncommon, unless I haven't read enough.
Yeah, so securitization, as I spoke about, is like think of ESLA or think of what they're proposing to do with like the road fund. You have the money, you put it in a fund, right? I sell an IOU, and then based on the bonds or the IOU, I pay you over a period of time. In this particular instance, what you're saying is that I am creating a company, and in that company, I want you to have some shares in that company, and we'll both benefit based on the upside or the downside. But in order to have shares in that company, we need to have a value for that company. And the value of that company is determined in this case by all the royalties that you're getting over the lifetime of the individual mines, discounted forward to the present time, plus whatever multiple there is on top of it. So there's no kind of ambiguity in here. Securitization is one different thing. You're dealing with that. Here, what they're talking about is monetization and raising or selling shares to raise equity investment in the new company.
Just a quick question as well. The response from the Deputy Finance Minister was that they cannot really release the price and the quantity and the number of years that they use in their calculation of the valuation ahead of the prospectus being issued. I don't know if is this regular that
it happens. It happens. There's nothing that's untoward in there. Typically, when you're going to the market and you have to do like a prospectus or an IPO, you don't want to be producing forward-looking statements. These things happen within the private, flows. What perhaps makes it a little bit difficult in this case is that you're dealing with a sovereign entity and a sovereign state.
One question.
But regardless, we need to have an idea of what the underlying valuation is for the respective assets. Because in any case, we know the revenue streams.
Please.
Okay, Mr. Chinapo has a question for you.
Sure. Yes, Senior.
Are you saying that if you are going to list on the stock exchange, that you don't value your company and determine the value before you go to list on the stock exchange?
Oh, for sure, you would do that. But that would be captured in your prospectus.
Thank you.
No?
Fantastic. Fantastic. That will be captured in the prospectus. So if I'm a member of parliament, this country belongs to all of us. We are the shareholders of this country. The chief executive is more or less like the managing director. And he comes to tell us that, look, I'm going to list on the stock exchange. I want to float it. And the people's representative ask you, how have you valued the company? What is the value of the company? What are the future cash flows you expect? So that you and I can do the NPVs and the IRs and determine whether it's even worth doing it or not. And the minister look into our face and tell the people of Ghana that that is confidential. And that he can't release it to the people's representatives.
No, that's not what he said.
And you go.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Theo, hold on. I think that's an important question because if the valuation is underdone, there can be short selling. So if you know that the real value is say 3 billion, and you say, oh, it's 1.5 billion, somebody knowing that actually this company is worth 3 billion can easily buy shares and quickly sell it. Before 6 months later, makes 300 million.
Fantastic.
And then robs the state. And I think the Chikata and the Ansa article make that point. So I don't know how do you balance the fact that it's a public institution versus also.
No, I think, let me not really, let's get it straight. I think that the state could have provided those details to Parliament, right? A lot of these documents go to the Parliament and all of that, and I'm sure there's some confidentiality and some disclosure, blah, 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 around that. So definitely there could have been.
Your internet is doing that thing again. So you think Parliament could have known, but it oughtn't have come to the public because Parliament could have found a way of using that information and kept it privileged. But once it gets to the public, it could prejudice the whatever.
I can explain to us if that was done. Because providing that to Parliament is one thing. Making that public is another separate thing altogether. So we need to be clear on that and ask, was that provided to Parliament? Did you get an idea of what the potential valuation range is as the representation of the sovereign people of Ghana? And then whether or not the IPO prospectus comes out, that's a different kettle of fish altogether.
Okay, just a final point. Your own estimate is that the company should be valued around 2.5 billion. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you do like a conservative estimate based on the forecast of production, and then based on some gold price assumptions as well, you would end up around 2.4, 2.5 billion. But there's a range, and in my analysis, I have a range of 1.6 on the downside to around 3 or so billion on the upside. And then you can have a number of things happen in between that.
Fantastic. Thank you. Mr. Mesa.
Bernard, you see, it's rather unfortunate when comments that people make, and in this case, public officers, are twisted for political purposes. I was in the committee meeting when the question was posed to the Deputy Finance Minister, Charles Edubuahine, regarding the need for the prospectus to be made available to members of parliament. And his response was quite clear that, look, we are in the process of building the prospectus. It's not something that is complete as we speak. Now, they need to go through some regulatory processes at the London Stock Exchange before the document is available for the public. We had a situation where, obviously, we ourselves as MPs have sometimes not behaved in a manner that is befitting of our role. And so they don't want a situation where these documents will be made available to us and they will find itself, or the document will be found out there in the public domain. So it is premature at that point to make those documents available to the Finance Committee. That was exactly his response. So how do you then now come and sit here and say that you asked for the document and it was flatly refused, that it was confidential, they were not going to make it available to you? That's not what transpired.
Yes, can you respond to that?
I was on the committee, and you just said it. And at the press conference, Mr. Edubuahine said that for the purposes of confidentiality, it will not be made available. You are a living witness. What the Agyapa is saying is just a twisting of the facts, because he said it publicly. He's on record to have said that. But you know, my brother, because of time, I want to deal with the Attorney General.
Attorney General.
The President gave approval on the 24th of March, 2020. The letter is here. 24th of March. You look at the chronology. Then let me just get the date. In July, the Attorney General's letter.
There are about
in July,
4 letters.
Now I'm referring to the July one.
Okay.
After the President is given approval and directed the Minister of Finance to go to Parliament and seek approval, the Attorney General then says that at 5, that this agreement is unconscionable. Why does she say it's unconscionable? She says that the agreement runs in perpetuity. Take this agreement. Where is the terminal period?
You want me to show you?
Show me where this agreement tells you that
there are 5 agreements. Which agreement are you
I'm looking at the restated investment agreement.
It's
right here. In fact, the original and the amended and restated.
Can I look at it?
Let him tell us.
So you're saying that there's... sorry, AG's letter on July 22 is what you're referring to, right?
Yes.
Where she says that this is in perpetuity.
Yes, the AG. And you see the chronology. The President gave approval on the 24th of March. So the question is that, couldn't the President have ensured that his own AG works on this document before the President proceeds to tell the AG that go to Parliament? After the President gave approval, the AG described the agreement as unconscionable. The President's own Attorney General described this agreement as unconscionable. But you see, if Mr. Gabiasa Rochedako, Mr. Ken Oforiatta, Edubuahine and co. have their own business in their backyard, and they decide that they will keep information from the public, I have nothing against that. That's their own cup of tea. Yeah. But when they state, Ghana, our gold resources, you are coming to Parliament to seek approval, and I sit as a member of Parliament, paid by the taxpayers' money, and I don't demand critical information, the underlying assumptions, the cash flows, the valuation, the dividend policy, the prospectus, and all that. And I'm not even giving dead timelines. Let's even assume that he said it was in a draft stage. Draft stage, and when are you providing that? House of record
That's a serious point you have to address.
House of Records not.
You have to address
The
it.
House of Records
No,
not.
I'll take a break. I'll take a break for you to
The
address when we come
people's
back.
representative.
There are the issues
As
the
a member
AG
of parliament
raises
from Agyapa
in
constituency,
You can choose to blame this chief with any of the letters that the AG.
This to me.
No, I think your point is
Look,
clear.
my brother.
I want him to address it.
This deal.
I need to-
Agyapa, this deal.
Yeah.
It's a crime against humanity. Even Satan is not happy with this deal. I'm telling you. Even
I'll
Satan
take
is
a
not happy
short
with
break.
this deal.
And when I come back, I'll try and get Mr. Agyapa's response to the AG because the chronology is pretty interesting. But I need to point out to listeners that there's another letter, though, written on August 12th.
Thank you.
Where the perpetuity issue is no longer there. There are 7 issues raised. Perpetuity is no longer addressed in the August 12th letter, though. We'll take a break. This is what? Is it point of view? We'll be back. Stay with us.
The Samsung Blue Tax Sale, biggest sale of the year. Get unbeatable deal on selected products. Buy the Galaxy S20 Plus or Ultra and get discount voucher. Buy the Galaxy Z Flip and get free Galaxy Buds Plus. And buy selected Galaxy A Series device and get free gift bags. Buy 8K QLED and get up to 25% discount. Buy refrigerators or air conditioners. Buy washing machine and get free detergent. The Samsung Blue Tax Sale, the biggest sale of the year.
Cause I'm the new best thing. I'm the new best thing. Better than you've ever seen. I'm the new best thing. I'm gonna be the king. I bring that ching ching ching. Yeah, I'm the new best thing. I'm the new best thing.
Discover new Silky Guinness Smooth. Perfectly balanced for a smooth, refreshing taste. New Guinness Smooth.
Deliberations regarding the ratification of the agreement began with the presentation of the Finance Committee's report, which recommended the approval of the agreement by majority decision. MP for Bolgatanga East, Dr. Dominic Ayine, indicated the minority's disapproval of the agreement on legal grounds. MP for Yapekusol, John Jinapo, questioned the financial propriety of the agreement.
The question is, if President Akufo-Addo, Ghana was your company and you were the board chairman, would you bring this document for us to approve? No. Would you bring this document for us to approve? You get $200 million per annum, and you insist that you want to take 500 million and seed 140 million per annum to a so-called SPV. Mr. Speaker, this is unfortunate. And like the learned former Deputy Attorney General said, this transaction is opaque. This transaction does not meet best practices. This transaction is inimical to this country.
Minister for Information Kojo Oponkroma justified the agreement, ending his submission with the statement "Papano" in reference to his colleague John Jinapo.
The transaction capitalizes Ghana's revenue from gold royalties while reducing Ghana's budgetary exposures to fluctuations in gold prices and other external factors. Because, Mr. Speaker, anybody who has paid attention to our fiscal tables and the proportions that accrue from royalties knows that it fluctuates depending on the world market pricing for gold and the volumes we are producing. This structure stabilizes how much we are able to raise and appropriate on an annual basis. And it is a structure that I think our colleagues should stop shouting, like the fancies say, one shout, stop shouting, take their time, appreciate and support. I want to encourage my good friend who just spoke. In my hometown, who say Papano, Papano, Papano. I want to encourage Papano to take some time and follow the structure of this transaction and to support it. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
This provoked a response from the minority leader Haruna Idrisu.
We take strong objection to it. If you don't withdraw, we will recognize you today as minister. We will refer to you as minister. We will not do what you do. From today, we will recognize you as minister of this republic. And we will not accord you any respect as minister. Let's close to the doors. What do you mean? What do you take us for?
What do you take us for? But John, to be fair, it's interesting that your anger as a minority was more about Papano than about. I mean, you just said that document was, even Satan will not approve the document. I didn't see Haruna get so angry. He was more angry about Papano than the document.
No, because we had only one slot. And I'm very grateful to the minority leader. He ceded his slot to me. The majority leader insisted that only one contribution after the secondment. So I think Sibe and Ayene spoke. And then after
I seconded the motion.
Yes, after that, no, because we didn't second, we said we weren't going to be part of it. So after Ayene, it had to do with leadership. And the minority leader ceded his slot to me.
So when you finish talking, then
when I finished talking, then upon case, so he had no option than to respond to.
Yeah, I saying that, why is it funny to Papano and not is? But what's so serious? If you are saying they are saying royalties for perpetuity,
yes,
didn't Upon Krumah bait you and you fell into his trap? Because basically this is a non-issue.
Because the debate had closed for the minority side. We work with standing orders, we work with practices.
So he couldn't have gone back to
he cannot come back and debate the matter again because he has ceded his slot to me.
My point is that your
now,
anger about his anger on the Papano was more than your anger about the deal.
No problem, but what the smart minority leader would do is that he would then take advantage of what Kojo Upon Krumah said, using our standing orders, to say that the terms he used and the terminology is unparliamentary.
You should withdraw.
Yes, and based on that, then you chip in a bit of the.
I get it. So the strategy.
So the learned, intelligent minority leader took advantage of that situation.
You need to respond to the issue. 24,
not determination.
So 24.
What was wrong with the word Papano?
I didn't understand. We have only 10 minutes. 24th March.
Only 10 minutes. I have a lot on my plate.
Agyapa
Mensah. Give me all the 10 minutes.
22nd July, AG says this is in perpetuity. To be fair, she doesn't state that in the August letter, but it's still serious. That President has approved, and the AG's view is that this cannot be right. And the President is a former AG as well.
You see, the issue of the President giving approval, really, President can give approval on condition.
It's not there.
But of course, the fact that, but of course, if the President had given approval, blanket approval, the document would have come straight to Parliament from the Finance Ministry. But the processes of the AG vetting still took place even after the President had given an approval. So it stands to reason that the President's approval was conditional. That yes, proceed when the AG okays it. Hence, the AG making comments on the draft document that had been submitted to her office. Following that, responses were issued to her, engagements were made, meetings were held, and finally, she okayed the transaction for same to be brought to Parliament. So what is the issue?
Are you not concerned that, another question, are you not concerned that the AG took pains to say about 4 times before the issue of perpetuity, before the assignment agreement was brought? So she says, we have maintained in all our advice to the Ministry of Finance that the assignment agreement should receive parliamentary approval. Please refer to our advice on 28th May, 22nd July, 5th August, and now 12th August. She's almost struggling to say the same thing. It was after this that the the assignment agreement was now added to the other 4. Is that not problematic?
I don't think so at all. Because you see, clearly, as opposed to the situation where we've done securitization of our proceeds with debt, this was new. Okay, this was an equity transaction, and so per the documents that I've seen and the responses that the transaction advisor submitted to the AG, it was apparent that the AG potentially did not understand the nature of the transaction that they sought to do. And so that was why it was important for them to meet and explain the structure to the AG, why it is that they are setting up a company that would operate as a commercial vehicle, which obviously will have perpetual succession, okay, with Ghana holding 51% at all times. However, with respect to the
issue of perpetuity
assigned royalties, they are not in perpetuity.
Can I see?
And I challenge anybody.
Read it.
I will read it.
Let's settle the matter.
This agreement, into brackets, and any assignment and allocation of gold mineral royalties under it shall terminate on the date on which the last of the allocated money lease has expired or been terminated without any further extension or renewal. Into brackets, such period the term. The Republic may, permissive, sole discretion of the Republic extend the term of this agreement. What does it mean?
Can I then refer the Attorney General?
Please. I'm going to ask a rhetorical question. Let me provide an
Are you
answer.
doing the same thing?
Yes, what the Attorney General said, and ask whether it's different from this, so the viewers can make an informed decision.
Okay.
He's just read what is in the original document.
Yes.
Now listen to what the Attorney General said.
22nd July.
22nd. This agreement ran its perpetuity and therefore has no fixed term. Then listen to what he said. They are expected to run until the expiration of the last mining lease. Is that not what is captured here? Then he says that the agreement also appeared to cast a stone with no option to evaluate the effective and satisfactory. And says that this makes the agreement unconscionable. So the issue of the last mining lease, the Attorney General herself has raised it here.
But the last mining lease
you have a point and says that
every mining lease has a term.
Wait, they are expected to run until the expiration of the last mining lease in Ghana.
So she acknowledges that.
She acknowledges that.
But I don't have a problem.
Proceeds on that
the fact
to say that it is unconscionable.
So let me listen to this.
Has that changed?
Bernard,
Has that changed?
You have 7 judges sitting on the bench, okay, all providing different reasons for arriving at a certain conclusion. So the fact that the AG professed this view.
Oh.
No, hold on. And that's why I said that post the meeting or the letter of 22nd July, meetings were held, explanations were provided, and the AG subsequently issued the final opinion that did not capture this issue.
What's the date of her final view and no objection? No, but because
Okay.
the 12th of August one still has 7 outstanding issues. The 12th August one, when she was requested to provide the final view and no objection, which I have here, she raises 7 points about the deal should come to the assignment agreement should come to Parliament.
Yes.
Clause 7.2 of the bench agreement and sub-related clause 1.4.
Yes.
With the comment she put there, MOF should have the right to examine the issues at stake to determine whether it wants to join the action. Text of non-recourse disclosure, sovereign immunity and waiver, recommendation to delete ARG royalties. Have all these 7 things been done?
Bernard, if you read the letter that you just read, it would tell you clearly that subject to the incorporation of these issues in the agreement, they can then forward it to Parliament. So let anybody who says that these issues have not been resolved in the final document that went to Parliament. Okay. And then we can.
So you satisfied yourself that all these 7 points.
I just read this. So but look at this is a relationship agreement.
You see.
No, but I think to be fair,
look.
These 7 points she raises here, she doesn't mention the issue of perpetuity again.
Yes,
in her last letter, she doesn't mention it anymore.
That in this original document, the issue of the last mining lease is still there. And the AG raises it here and proceeds to say that that structure is unconscionable. Unless you are telling me
so she can't
that for one reason or the other, the AG suddenly, following all these meetings, change their mind.
If you don't understand...
So AG needs to come and respond to that, to whether why she wrote this here and doesn't see the problem.
I have another point.
We have a minute now. We have a minute now.
If you don't understand the nature of these transactions and the engagements that take place, okay, you may draw the kinds of conclusions that JJ is drawing. But obviously, anybody who is familiar with... But I'm sure you've done some transactions. No, it's not.
No, if you don't understand, then you draw the kind of conclusions JJ is doing.
No.
Then you're simply saying that JJ doesn't understand.
If you take offense, I withdraw. I don't have a problem. But the point that I'm making is this, that in drafting legal documents, engagements take place, discussions are held, drafting change.
But oughtn't the AG, don't you think the AG needs to explain to us why her view has changed on this?
Her view hasn't changed. That's what I'm saying to you, that post the July letter that you make reference to, it wasn't like they didn't meet. The teams met. And the AG confirms the meetings and the correspondence in her 12th August letter.
The 12th August letter doesn't mention gratuity.
No,
she doesn't say that she's satisfied with it.
She makes references to...
We have only 30 seconds.
Sorry.
She makes references to engagements that have been held. Makes references to all correspondence that have been exchanged between the parties. And now arrives at the conclusion that
these are her remaining issues. So by not mentioning it, she's satisfied.
Absolutely.
Fair enough. 30 seconds.
This is the relationship agreement.
It's
and
fine.
if you go to page 5, 3, undertaking of the fund in the Republic of Ghana, go to I. This is what Ghana says, that we shall not exercise any of the voting rights to remove the chairman or any independent non-executive director appointed by the board. What it means is that we are undertaking that the chairman, so on more number or near deal, whether he is not performing or performing, the Republic of Ghana, the majority shareholder, cannot exercise the right to remove the chairman.
Wow.
Look,
You see, no,
I want to say thank you. We've done 1.5 hours.
you see,
JJ confused you. These are very standard provisions.
Gabi,
I want to say
Explain to you.
I want to say thank you
the
to
Pentagon of a cabal.
These are
My
independent directors. They are
the
not
chamber on the Zoom. Thank you very much. Andre Japamesa, John Jenapotio. Thank you so much for the clarity you bring. Thank you, Andrew, MP for Secunde. Thank you, John Jenapo, MP for Yape Kusou. We hope you've learned something new. We hope to get more angles, particularly from the AG side of things, just to clarify a few more things. But we sincerely thank you for watching. This is The Point of View brought to you by Airtel Tigo. Stay with CTTV. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
The Point of View is powered